Welcome to the People Leader Accelerator Podcast. I'm Executive Coach Jess Yuen, joined by my co-host, the co-founder and managing partner of People Leader Accelerator, Andrew Bartlow. On this show, we dive deep with business and HR leaders to uncover what really works when it comes to building high-performing organizations, navigating leadership challenges, and making better management decisions. Whether you're the first people leader at a startup or a seasoned executive at a company with scale, you'll find practical insights you can apply right away. For show notes and free bonus resources, visit peopleleaderaccelerator.com/podcast. And if you're looking for hands-on support from developing your leaders to creating a high-performance culture to hiring the right people, visit us at peopleleaderaccelerator.com. We'd love to help. Let's get into today's episode.
Let's kick off. Appreciate the time that we have with you, Q. There's a lot to just figure out in today's world with AI and HR, and I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit more about that together. But maybe just for the listeners of this podcast, would love to share a little bit more about you. And boy, you and I have known each other 10 years, not quite 10 years yet, but close.
Yeah. Andrew replied to a cold email I sent him on LinkedIn, trying to find him, and he replied, and that's how we got to know each other.
We had coffee in the basement of the Jones Lang LaSalle office in Chicago when I happened to be in town for a alumni thing. And
I wrote to him. I was like, I always want to be in tech. Would you be up for just a chat with me? He's like, I'm in Chicago right now because I'm going to Urbana-Champaign to give a talk at the graduation commencement, which is where I went to. And I was like, well, I'm in Chicago, and we had coffee in the building of JLL. So life does pay you back,
I'm just so happy for you and how your career has accelerated. You were doing great before, but getting out to the Bay and starting at Airbnb. And actually, there was kind of a weird connection there where the recruiting manager who was hiring for HR used to work for me.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. I just wrote to him, and when we met, and I was like, I'm actually exploring Airbnb. He's like, wait a second, I know someone. It's just crazy. Life just keeps on. And every job since then, I call him before I take it because I know he's going to keep me honest to help me think through, because sometimes I can be all over the place too. So
I'm always thankful to be part of that, sounding board network for you, and, makes me feel useful, makes me feel good.
Well, let's just say he has influenced me making some bad calls too. So
You're welcome. Yeah. Well, I'm excited that you're on today because, your background has so much breadth. You are interestingly like one of the few other people who can be like, I'm in people space, but I studied electrical engineering. We have that in common.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
You went on to get like a real estate license, and then you were at Airbnb and led their really incredible, very forward work from anywhere organization. You've been chief people officer a few times over. You're now at high level. You were even a chief communications officer at one point. And so the breadth that you bring to the table was really, really incredible. For those who don't know you, aren't as familiar with you, Q, could you share a little bit more about yourself with our audience?
Yeah, well, it's tough to already beat the intro you gave, but my name's Q. I studied electrical engineering. I grew up in India. I came here for college when I was 17, went to boarding school as well, because I think all of this has influenced how I've kind of think about interacting with people. So I was an engineer at the start of my career in finance, worked for CFOs for the first 5 years, did some global strategy and ops, then started a few of my own companies, and really just realized along the way that there was only one key to success and one key to failure every single time, and it was people. And in a very weird way, my engineering mindset, which still is with me, I wanted to try and figure people out. And that's like the most complex, as we all know, there's too many non-static variables involved. I kind of paved my way into wanting to work in HR after getting rejected numerous times because I didn't have the background that HR skill set would need at that point in time. Yeah, the last, 14, 15 years has been dedicated to learning every facet of HR and bringing it all together. Been thankful for a lot of opportunities that have let me kind of learn and grow in that time span. And then I do a bunch of stuff just from advising to investing to mentoring and coaching, and also just giving back. So very involved in kind of our school district education system as well. So always trying to give back, because I know that if people didn't give to me, I would not be even close to where I am today in terms of my skills, my confidence, and all that. So yeah, just full circle. I have a 4.5-year-old son, which I have to mention because he's the one who literally teaches me and humbles me at the same time every single day when I think I've figured it out. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, parenting is one of those biggest lessons that I think carries so many learnings that fold into leadership and how to manage and how to set expectations and hold accountability and everything.
Yeah. And people tell you about it, but till you go through it, I feel like there's not a way to really experience it. So
it's kind of the in theory and in practice challenge of almost anything. Of that, like in theory, it seems like it should be very straightforward to deal with a small human, and in practice is actually so complicated.
Yeah.
One thread that I would want to pull on that I wasn't planning to, but you mentioned you work for a lot of CFOs early in your career. I'm curious what learnings that you carried forward from that experience that you use now as a people leader, and either how you think about working with them in the best ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in the first part of my career when I worked for CFOs, I worked a lot in FP&A specifically. So I was building kind of FP&A tools back in Oracle, PeopleSoft era. And I think what it made me kind of appreciate along the way is two things. One is HR and finance are tied to the hip no matter what we do, right? Like we are almost two sides of the coin, because planning is a good example, workforce planning, right? It is a joint effort. So you have to understand that you're two sides of the same coin. The second part for me that I leveraged over and over was because I understood finance, I could try and at least speak that language when the concern was coming more from that side of the house. Meaning, if a CFO was concerned about how much we were spending, or how are we going to quantify the returns, or how is this going to impact top line or bottom line? Because at the end of the day, it's to drive the business forward. Really switching from the just the people-centric part of the conversation, connecting with them on the financial part, and then bringing it back. So if I want to do something on the people front, it's not always leading with the people program. It's leading with how they might see it too from their lens. So it's really helped me put myself in their shoes, because everyone, has their domain expertise, and everyone would rightfully, think of things from their angle. So it's come a full circle, I would say, because of the workforce planning, headcount planning, which is always hard to do, especially in a hyper-growth environment, extra hard to do in a founder-led environment. And, it just means that we have to be that much more tied to the hip to move and pivot directions as needed.
Absolutely. I think what you're bringing up, though, is this idea of this role as a people leader is partially translation of how do we translate what we're trying to do into their language, but also what they're trying to do and understand the objectives of other leaders, and particularly the finance team is a really, really important central part of any organization's success. How do we translate what they're optimizing for over to the people side as well?
And I think to your point, that extrapolates to any function, really. That's the part I love actually about being in the people function, is you're kind of zooming in and out of every single function when you're trying to understand a perspective of a technology leader or a sales leader or a finance leader. You're constantly getting to kind of see, or at least try to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from, right? So that's the part I love, because you're kind of all over the place, but in a methodical way.
I feel like there's a special place for you and Jess and our friend Marie Such as polymaths, as people that are accomplished in a bunch of different ways. Like all three of you are musical. All three of you have pursuits outside of work that are like specific and interesting that you're accomplished in. All three of you have multidisciplinary professional pursuits, like, Q with, finance and engineering early on, and now HR, and you were more people analytics or ops at one point, and Jess in consulting and software engineering before that. And Marie, my goodness, like she was an editor of a spicy foods magazine and a concert musician and stuff like that. So I don't know, like I'm an HR guy since what feels like birth. But at the same time, I feel like I'm, drawn to the multidisciplinary aspect as well of the finance and the operations. And I want to be where the action is. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's a thread to pull around, is there a unique value that polymaths, that people that can move across disciplines, that makes them more successful in senior level HR roles?
I think so. I mean, it comes down to, I boil it down to curiosity and kind of agility kind of combined into one package, right? I think to the point you made of doing a lot within the fabric, it just makes us better people leaders, because there is no real, I don't know, at least I've not found a perfect playbook of what the role even is, and it will play out the way it is. Like, yes, there are some table stakes stuff in our profession, right? Like comp leveling and compliance and payroll. I'm not saying those to minimize the function. That is the foundation of the function. But everything on the business partnering side, which is what we deal with people, like there is really no playbook. Yeah, there's a playbook of have a business partner should do X, Y, Z, but you're going into conversations trying to understand different people and different people. It's all about understanding perspectives. And I guess, assume that if you're doing, or at least in these particular cases, if you're doing other things, for me, like if I do things with music or I do things that give me an outlet outside of work or outside of the core job, to me, I do believe that they actually fuel what I could do better in my job, be it because it's a decompression outlet, be it because it's, getting my mind to be more creative, whatever it is. So there's definitely something there, but curious on, yeah.
Yeah, there's something in what you're saying, though, around you're wanting to see things from other people's perspectives within the organization. And I think part of it is the experiences where you, at least for me, have had experiences working on the side of the business, been on the other side of the table in these roles. It has been helpful to remind me to take that other perspective and to know, people are optimizing for different things and take a beat to understand that before diving in, which I think we often are really excited to let's
Yeah.
work on this thing I want to work on. And oh, wait, by the way, you've got a whole bunch of stuff on your plate. Let me first dive in there. I'm curious, you've mentioned methodologies that you use in order to stay in touch with leaders in the organization and dive in and out of what's going on in the different departments. Could you give some examples of how you do that, especially for our audience who's still figuring out what is their style and approach to HR? I've always really benefited from hearing how other leaders think about it and where do they kind of have structure and where do they kind of improv or have more of this intuition.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing, and just kind of peeling back a little bit to the previous thread, and then I'll tie it on to this. I ventured to get in the HR profession roughly 8 years into my career. And the reason I did that was at that time, it was purely out of frustration of not getting the partnership or the understanding that I wanted to relay to my HR business partner. Could have been, I could not describe it well, whatever, at the end of the day, that was kind of the frustration. So for me, it was always like making sure that if I'm in that seat, I'm also trying to understand the other side, because it's easy to just complain or feel frustrated on, one side. To your point on kind of how, I think it really just comes down to, for me, like not leading with the people programs. Often you'll have conversations with leaders, especially if the leader's proactively approaching you, it's for an issue. That's normally where we get pulled in, at least the initial, right? Till you build that credibility and trust. And then you're a thought partner for almost too much, which is also not a bad thing. But when someone starts the conversation, either they're having an issue or they can't get the performance, whatever the case may be, I actually don't even talk about the HR side. I try to unpack like what is actually going on from the business side. Right? Like, what are they trying to solve? Yes, there's a people issue. They can't get performance. But why do you want more performance? I keep going under the why, to the point where you are then talking their language and you are trying to understand what they are actually trying to solve for. And sometimes the solution may be a people solution. And sometimes the solution may not even be a people solution. They've actually figured it out while we've talked about it. Normally, I say this jokingly, but I do mean it. I'm not necessarily a good or the best HR leader, people leader. I'm just a business leader that happens to try to understand the business well, and then marrying up the HR program or the people side of it, I think is actually easier than approaching it the other way around. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it really is like, don't try to master HR, look at all the HR trends. I just try to like master the business, understand the business inside out. The rest just comes. It's easier on you as well if you're trying to do that. But that's my inside out weird methodology.
I want to jump on this because it's so valuable for our audience of mid to senior HR leaders. Like there's this trap. I talk about this in People Leader Accelerator all the time. There's this trap of trying to deliver this imaginary list of HR things that all good companies or all good HR functions will do. And you kind of tick your way through, like we did comp leveling, and we have a competency matrix, and we have interview scorecards, and we have this and we have that. And ultimately, your organization may or may not need any of those things.
Yeah.
Let alone right now. Like if you're a cash burning startup that's searching for product market fit, like how important is your competency scorecard really? Maybe if you're looking for a VP of engineering and you're trying to make that a really, really good hire, but if you're starting with the programs, I don't know, maybe there's this analogy to marketing where You want to sell the benefits and the outcomes rather than sell the features. Oh, wait, there's this great competency framework, and here's all the things that competency frameworks can do.
Yeah.
But if you start with, for our company to be massively successful, we need a really strong head of engineering or go-to-market leader. And how can we make that happen? Q, I love how you frame up, like, start with the business problem.
Yeah.
Don't start with your HR tactics.
Yeah.
Before we get back to the conversation, here's a quick word about People Leader Accelerator. If you're an HR leader at a scaling company, you don't have to do it alone. The People Leader Accelerator is a 16-week program where you will learn, grow, and build lasting relationships with peers who get it. And once you graduate, you're part of our community for life. Apply now for the spring cohort at peopleleaderaccelerator.com. All right, let's get back into the conversation.
Because the other thing I've learned over time is, like, no one's going to remember our HR programs. Everyone's going to remember how the business grew or the business was impacted in that time. Like, when you go through hypergrowth at any company, like, people are not going to go back and be like, oh, it was the competency framework, this leveling framework that got us there. It's going to be like, we did stuff together and the business grew and we all won. Another mindset I have, and I say this willing to be corrected. We are basically business enablers, right? At the end of the day, we are not owners of, like, every single business leader is responsible for their team's performance and how they actually manage their people. We are not here to manage them and their time, but we are basically business enablers. So I just kind of go with, you got to just impact the business. That's my measurement of success too. Yes, engagement scores. Yes, all hiring, time to hire, all those are table stakes. We should be doing those to make sure the car is running great in that analogy. But what really matters is, like, did we win the race together? Did we actually go IPO at Airbnb if that was the case? Did we turn around the business when the pandemic and put us upside down? Did we grow when we wanted to grow? That's what I've learned, like, people remember. And what I remember too at the end of the day, we grew 3x. We had to downturn. We had to turn ourselves around. We had a great IPO. We did the Live and Work Anywhere program. So that's how I think, if at least I remind myself, what's going to be lasting after that? It's not the HR program. It's how that enabled the business to be impacted. And if you lead with that, then you're trying to understand the business impact first. That makes sense.
I love that. It's a little meta because you work at a company called High Level, and I feel like you're taking us to that higher level view of how to think about this, because you're more business oriented. When you're looking at those measures of success for your own team, how do you think about dashboards and measurements, and what things do you keep a closer eye on, and what things do you, maybe a people leader might be studying that you would be like, for me, it's not actually at the forefront of my thought process?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of table stakes kind of metrics, right? Be it in recruiting, time to fill, offers closed, those kind of things, be it attrition. I look at those periodically, but I let my team kind of look at those closely, because what I'm looking at is, where are we not enabling the business? Like, where are we getting stuck in our own kind of world? The business is trying to roll out an incentive program for our new sales team, and we just haven't got that off the ground in 6 months. It's not just us collectively as an organization, because from the lens I'm looking at across the board, is every team moving in the same direction and relatively at the same speed. Everyone will be at some levels of varying maturity to grow the business. I'm a data geek. That's kind of where I started my HR career in analytics. We've got all the dashboards, but I've kind of moved on over the last, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 years on obsessing over them, letting my team kind of do it for their each domain. So when I'm talking to them about how did we do in recruiting at the end of the quarter, or how did we do at the end of the year, like, we are looking at those, and all of them send out the dashboards. So I guess from my own lens, I want to look at, how is the company operating? Are we stuck? And a lot of that also ends up being in terms of communications and how we're kind of data and information is flowing, which is hard to quantify from a metric standpoint. You can look at open rates and stuff like that. But I would say it's mostly around, I look at our financials data every week. We publish, we've got segments of financial data, customer growth, acquisition data. There's no real HR metric in there, but all of that is, for me, implied in those data. Yes, when we do our board meetings, we've got some great, people stats, but those are more pulse checks to make sure we're staying on track. So I don't know if I answered that. I don't use it day to day anymore, because I would rather understand how the businesses are doing.
I mean, and what I'm hearing from you is, I'm actually tracking more of the metrics that maybe if I were CEO, I would be looking at. my team is the one that's actually keeping a much tighter pulse on the traditional people metrics that are still very important.
Yeah.
But this allows you to stay at that kind of more strategic level, business level.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, a lot of my role or any CPO's role is kind of being a good HR business partner to not just the C-suite, but potentially the extended leadership team beyond them as well, right? So that's where I spend most of my time, because either there's frustrations or either it's not moving quick enough, or there needs to be some cohesive gelling, between teams. For example, go to market and product. They always are like, they have to be in sync. What you're releasing on product, we should be able to have our go-to-market team be ready to support the customers. And when you're in hypergrowth, everyone's moving really, really quick. So yeah, I look for those indicators either proactively or reactively, because they come up to me from the business leader being like, I just can't make movement on this. We're trying to grow quick enough and we can't support X, Y, and Z kind of thing.
There's a favorite 3-minute video that I often share with my mentoring clients and folks in PLA. Patrick Lencioni, author of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, talks about the concept of team number one, and the idea that it's really natural as the head of a function, head of HR, head of engineering, head of marketing, whatever, to focus on that functional or departmental stuff. You've hired that team, your depth is in that area, you have an affinity for it, you have a sense of ownership for it for sure. But really, your number one team, the team that you spend the most time and attention with, should be the executive team supporting the success of the organization. So I just love how he articulates that with a dry erase marker on a board, and says it really, clearly and directly. And like, if you don't do that, if you don't act like a member of the senior team, if you're advocating for your function or your department, then you're setting up a bunch of adversarial turf wars with your peers, where you're competing for attention and competing for resources.
Yeah.
Q, such great reinforcement of like, that's what it looks like to be an effective HR leader, is to be an effective business leader looking at the top level company metrics.
That's a good point. I should watch that video again, because at the end of the day, like, there's no winning just in HR, right? Like, you win as a team, and if the team wins, you win. Like, if you're winning alone, I doubt the business is necessarily winning in that context. So
yeah, love it. I'd love to switch gears a little bit. We had a chance to spend some time together just yesterday, Q, where you were sharing with the PLA community some things that you've built using AI tools for your HR team and yourself at high level. And I'd love for you to share just a little bit more. Like, AI is such a hot topic. It's been a hot topic. It's going to continue to be. It's like this game-changing set of tools for us. I'd love for you to share a little bit more, and maybe even back up and share like your journey in AI with People GPT. What are you doing in AI? And like, we'll follow that thread and get to what our listeners can do with it.
Yeah, I'll start off with just kind of humbly accepting that I was late to the Gen AI game. When ChatGPT came out, November, December of 2022-ish, I think, if I've got my years right, I didn't really jump on the bandwagon of the power of Gen AI till almost a year after it came out. And the reason for that was, A, I didn't go down the rabbit hole quick enough, but B, I thought that it was more just of another fad, because AI was not new. AI was around for 10 years. I was like, Netflix was telling me what to watch. Spotify was telling me what to listen to. I didn't understand the generative part that was new. Almost a year later, when the custom GPT store came out, which must have been November of 2023-ish, I started building custom GPTs on a Friday, and I don't think I slept much till Sunday. That whole weekend went like, where did Q go? Because it was unplanned. It was basically just me in a room, like really building away. And that's when I realized, like, now we're in an era where things can be generated for us. And this is before like agents. This is before the last 1 year of things now even being able to do some form of decision making and autonomous tasks for us. So that was my initial journey. And then, People GPT was a community that I had started, which was again in the spirit of bringing and sharing and learning and growing together, was just a community of HR and AI leaders. Because I think in the world of AI, like, it's so dynamic, things are changing so much, things are evolving, and new tools are coming out so much that I learn from everyone I speak to. It's just constantly you learn of new things. Pulling it back, I think a couple macro thoughts that come to mind. One is, I strongly believe that AI is just going to empower humans and have the need for critical thinking that humans can do even more. So I don't think it's going to eliminate all jobs. It's going to eliminate some jobs, just like any technology revolution did. I mean, you could take any example when the printing press or when the sewing machine came out, people were hand sewing, right? So I think there is a level of disruption for sure. This is moving a lot quicker, but I think humans are going to be even more critically needed in the world of AI. And in my own kind of build mode, so when I joined High Level in July of 2024, we were, I think, just shy of 1,000 people, 900 something people. We're almost 1,800 people today in October of 2025. We grew very, very quick, and we're continuing to grow very, very quick, both from a business standpoint as well, which meant I needed to build teams in my HR function. I had the budget, I had the headcount, I didn't have the time. So what I did was I started playing with AI models while we were waiting to hire people. And in some cases, I didn't need to hire people, or I repurposed the roles to do different things. So a couple of real examples. Compensation, we've all been in kind of the HR operating model, which is nothing wrong with it, but it exists where a business partner would start writing a job description with the business. They would then level it to our internal framework, hand it over to the comp team. The comp team will do amazing precision level analysis, get you the comp data. It would go to recruiting. They would post the job, right? That's kind of the flow. And because I didn't have a comp team and I was kind of the team of one, I said, let me build a model. So we built our model. It's based off the Radford data that we subscribe to. It's basically meant to simulate what we would have done on our own. And today we don't have a dedicated comp team. Our business partners are able to get compensation data when they need it, provide it to the recruiting team, and we move forward. So that's a tangible example. I think another example is also hopefully more relatable, is just communication and change management. That is our job, right? Like if you can drive more communication, information flow, and get cohesiveness in an organization, the culture is going to be stronger, because culture is a byproduct of how people work and how people interact with each other. We're almost 1,800 people, 100% remote in 10 countries, right? So this gets even more amplified when you're not seeing folks in the office. And what we've done with the use of AI, and these also keep evolving, is multimodality communication to drive change management for different people based on what resonates with them. And, we are in a multi-generational workforce where multicultural, multi-generation, where different people relate to digesting information differently. For example, I don't like reading. I love listening. So I do long form podcasts. I do short form podcasts when I have time. I'll watch short X videos. I can't watch, super long ones, but someone else might love reading, right? Another example is when we had our engagement survey results, which we all have been through, and you have a deck, you share it with the groups, and we use Notebook LM, which is still Google's product. And we created like a podcast about our engagement surveys, which was blended with benchmarking data as well, because you can feed like 10, 20 docs into it and have it create a 6-minute podcast of two hosts talking about this whole data set that you put in a very professional and fun way. And that's how we shared it with a lot of folks. We also shared the deck. So if people want to look at the deck, they can look at the deck. If they want to listen to a podcast, they can listen to a podcast. You can probably translate stuff in any languages today. You can build an app to explain things that you want to do. For example, in the US, we recently switched to having everyone on the biweekly payroll calendar, because half were on semi-monthly, half were on biweekly. And as we've scaled, biweekly just makes more sense for the broader workforce. So we just literally spent 15 minutes and vibe coded an app, which was basically an app that people could go to and they could put in their annualized salary, and it will break down what their difference in paycheck would be pre-taxes and pre-benefit deductions between a biweekly and a semi-monthly. That took 10 minutes. So my point is like change management, communication of our own programs, but also across the organization can really be impacted with AI. So there's a lot. And, every month that passes by, there's a new tool and there's a new place, data set that you can play with. But I think there's a lot of ways. I think almost my team's kind of goal is, and it's been embedded now across the team. And some of it I had to jumpstart, right? Like, so this comes back to leading by example, I guess, if you will, in that context. Because I'm a builder, I started building stuff. I expected my teams to do it. And if the teams were not doing it, I was pushing them or nudging them in that right direction, to the point now where I think almost every single team member in mine is using it. Recruiting uses it for all sorts of stuff.
I'm curious, actually, because some people listening to this might be, well, Q, you have an engineering background, you've done all this stuff. For somebody who maybe isn't as confident to be able to just dive in, you're mentioning that app took 10 minutes. What would you encourage them to go try out as a way to just see how the barriers have come down actually quite significantly over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, the only way to do that is to experiment and just try it. Like, you have to take that first initiative on your own to try it. So, when ChatGPT came out, it took me a year to try it. Once I tried it, now it's my day to day kind of, I use it for all sorts of stuff. Seek out kind of ways for you to learn in your own ways, and then you have to try it yourself. I mean, you could do courses, you could do podcasts, you could do whatever it takes, but building an app, for example, I started off with Lovable and now I've quote unquote graduated to Replit because it's a little bit more sophisticated on the warehousing aspect of it. But you literally just sign up for a free account and you just go type and say, I want to build an app to do this. And it will build it in real time. It's crazy. It puts you down a rabbit hole. So heads up on that for whoever's trying, but it's a good one. There is no substitute to whatever that old saying is where you can't do it for people, right? Like, you can encourage them, they can get inspired. But really, the initiative has to come, and you just have to be curious. You have to step outside of the comfort zone. There's no other way.
So if I were to synthesize, I'm hearing, hey, go try out a Lovable might be a good intro. Or I think Google now has like aistudio.google.com.
Yeah.
It's simple as like one sentence, make me an app that, and describe it as best as you can. It creates it. And then you get to start just essentially iterating on that to say, oh, can you actually do this change to the thing that you created? And that's sort of what took you down the rabbit hole to figure it out. And now allows you to do things in 10 minutes because you're much more comfortable with saying, here's how I would describe this app.
Yeah. And I would just go one step further and say, like, it's not that because I'm using it for long, I'm comfortable and I can do it for 10 minutes. It was easy right off the bat because all I did was type English. I want to build an app to explain difference in payroll calendars. And here it was, like, it just did it. It's that jumpstart that you need. And I had to build that through my people team by basically saying, I want everyone to use it. Whoever wants a ChatGPT Pro subscription gets it. And if they get it, I made sure they understood that confidential data can go in there. It's not trained. It's our enterprise space. So it's okay because there's also that fear of, if I use it, what data should I put in there? So you have to give that kind of starting playground, if you will, encourage them to use it. And then every time in our all hands, there's one person demoing what they've built. That's part of our all hands, AI spotlight kind of thing, because the more people get encouraged. So I just wanted to point out, like, a lot of this is easy off the bat once you just log in and try it. Because it's so conversational, no coding, it's English or whichever language you prefer actually at this point in AI. A lot of them probably you can just speak into it. You don't even need to type.
I have some personal experience trying to vibe code a performance management tool in Lovable. For me, it's the first mile and the last mile that's the hardest. Actually taking the time to say, okay, I'm going to go experiment with a new tool because I've got plenty of other stuff going on and not like a ton of experimentation time, just like begging me to go fill. But then once I do open it up, then it's like fun and, I'm creative and I'm dying to get into Sora. A couple of my friends were just sending like videos that had like put our friends in like tutu ballerina dresses, like their images and their voices. And like we were teasing each other on our text chain, but like, it's unbelievable what Sora can do with video. And so I think you're right, Q. Like once you get past the first mile, then it's fun. But in my experience, the last mile in getting something that's like actually ready to use at work has been a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Where I can get pretty far, but then now I'm 5+ hours in and it still doesn't quite do what I want it to do. And I'd really rather have somebody that knows what they're doing.
There is a harsh reality because I may have oversold it as well, which you are pointing out, which is, it took 10 minutes to build the face of the app, right? Like the page, the landing page, which is designed pretty well, which may have taken, weeks in pre-AI, but it's not ready to use. Like I vibe coded another custom recruiting tool for myself because I couldn't get the recruiting tools to do what I wanted. I probably spent like 20 hours coding it because in English again, so I didn't have to do engineering code, but every single button is like, what does it do? It has the skin, but it doesn't have the functionality. So you're constantly testing. And even after I did that and used that for a few searches, it's not production ready to roll out to the company because that is a different level of, sophisticating you need. For me, what I found is in terms of prototyping, brainstorming, seeing what if, and even sometimes helping me articulate what my vision is to my team of a particular product, because sometimes I may say it, A, I may not articulate it the best, or B, it's hard to understand, even for myself sometimes, what's in my mind versus what I want. So when I white coded these apps, I was able to use that to my team to say, what if we could do this? And then they go down their own chain to see in our current application that we're using, can we infuse some of it? But you're right, to get it all the way to the last mile and use it, like the payroll example I gave was an easy one, right? It was just, you put in a number, divide by 26 on one side, divide by 24 on one side, and it was a job. Saved a lot of questions for us. But I think the what ifs, opening the mind on that, and then the execution part takes a lot of time. But again, it's doable. Even though I was an engineer, I hated coding. The reason I did electrical engineering in my undergrad was because I hated coding in C++ or Java, whatever the language was at the time. I just liked physical circuits. So now I'm able to finally, 25 years later, code because it's in English. So it's kind of a full circle on that.
Absolutely. I totally hear you on the coding piece of it. It's also why I went into electrical and not CS. I'm curious, given you mentioned, hey, there were actually, because of what we can do with AI, some implications on the organizational structure of maybe not hiring a role or repurposing it. As you look forward and how you are setting up your team, are there some elements of how you think about your org that maybe are different than they might have been a year or 2 years ago when you were thinking about how you would set up an HR structure? And what I'm thinking of this is an eye towards, like, as people are listening to you about, there's all these implications of AI on companies and on people, what have been or will be potentially some of these things that you might hypothesize will come about because of what AI can do for the people team, and how that might impact, or maybe has already impacted, how you're structuring your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, what I'm seeing and what I'm trying to push for is breaking down silos that existed because of organizationally how we were designed, be it on the HR team. That comp team is one kind of example of, it came out of necessity, but now it's a good reflection on why do we even have those silos, right? Like, why do they exist? They existed because of the skill set that was very different between someone who needs to do comp analysis and someone who is potentially a business partner. But that skill set now, that barrier is kind of broken down because of tools. So in some ways, this is how I've been for the last 10, 15 years. When I joined HR, I was always questioning why, and I do this in my life in general, but why are things a particular way? Because I always want to unpack the why. So I think we have an opportunity for breaking down silos. I think that's in the short term, which we've already seen. So it's not to say that all silos will be broken. Some are good to have, some are good to have segregation of duties, but how can we reduce them? In the long term, I did a blog post about this on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I need to do part 2 of it, which I need to just find time to write with the help of AI probably, but which I call is the team of one. And the concept here is, I think that the future of HR and potentially G&A functions is essentially going to be the future of having a very powerful generalist, which is the team of one. So you have one person that can be fed with multiple sources of information, be it compensation, be it legal, be it all these facets, and they're truly just a business partner with an engine under them that's fueled with a bunch of agents or AI, whatever the right technology evolution is at the time. And I think the future of the HR function can be potentially having 10 generalists embedded in each function, each business, right, with the right power. And recruiting, I think, will probably be a bit different, but they've been on that AI journey probably ahead of the rest of the function already in the last 4 or 5 years. And then if you extrapolate that further, why do we need a finance partner and an HR partner and a legal partner? Why don't you just have one business partner? It doesn't need to be an HR, finance, legal. One business partner embedded in each function, and they have all the tools at their fingertips, and they're going to do what humans will do best, which is make that judgment, make that instinct, understand the business, like kind of what we started off the top with. And maybe depending on the size of the business, you'll need 5 versus 1. We will be able to do more with less. But I think that doing more with less is also the flip side of that, is this is going to be a capacity unlock to do things we could not do before. So hopefully we can do more with less, do things that we could not do before, and just continues to evolve kind of the offerings we can give.
This just occurred to me. I wonder if there's any analogy to a startup that has a office manager or ops person before they've actually hired a finance person, before they've hired an IT person.
Yeah, they're doing it all, right?
Yeah, they're doing it all. They're like running the calendar for the founder.
Payroll, probably benefits.
Yeah, like
everything,
sometimes this role is called an EA, sometimes it's a chief
Yeah.
of staff. It's called a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if with the help of AI, instead of starting to specialize and having separate people do this at about 50 or 100 people, if you start to specialize and have separate people do it at a different exponential level. Like at some point, we probably still need a specialist. But does that move by a factor of 10 with our tools, or does it move by a factor of 2? That'd be a really interesting.
Yeah. Or the flip side of that might be doesn't move at all, but that extra capacity is now providing that level of business partnership that typically companies have to wait till they're couple hundred to invest in. So that's the capacity unlock of what it can provide. Either you can delay the resource allocation, or you keep the resource allocation the same, and now you have extra capacity to coach managers, to up level your talent, to make sure they're there way before your 500 people and people realize, oh shoot, I have the capacity and resources to implement or invest in learning programs, just as an example. So things that you had to wait for longer, you could probably do sooner, or you could just, delay the resource allocation. I mean, in some ways, if we think about it, versus 20, 30 years ago when, all of personnel information had to be managed on files and folders, on paper, it's another version of that, right? Like now, because of the digital revolution and digitization of records, we needed less people to handle files. This is another version of that, although it's moving a lot quicker for sure, I feel.
I mean, I like the idea of the capacity unlock, especially in the nearer term, because it's allowing for teams to move from being reactive to more space for that proactive level of thinking and action that, to your point, typically there isn't space or time for until later in more mature organizations. I think it's a very provocative push, though, of like a team of one, especially when you roll it up at the business level, because to your point, even with AI right now, there's a level of judgment. Like when you vibe code an app of like, is this actually the app that I wanted to have? Is this the answer that is actually really good? Is the Notebook LM's version of the podcast actually conveying what I need it to? That I wonder in that generalist world, how that judgment gets developed when so much gets absorbed up front, right? It's kind of like when calculators get introduced, everyone's like, people are not going to do math anymore. It's like, we still kind of need some math when you use a calculator to know that you didn't accidentally like type in the wrong number so you can gut check that it was the right thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's why that's a bit far out and to be determined, but like I try to go with the vision or put my mind in like almost an extreme situation and then see where life kind of takes us along the way. But yeah, that's a fair point too, for sure.
Absolutely. I feel like we need to have you on again at some point, because we didn't even talk about like your really cool work with Work From Anywhere and like how you work with these global teams and scaling. But our time is fast closing, and I want to make sure we fit in our accelerator round of questions, which is 3 short answers to these questions. Are you ready for it?
Sure, go for it.
Awesome. The first is, what sources would you recommend to our audience to be able to learn from to make them better HR leaders?
I would say podcasts, blogs from on Substack. I would say it really comes down to what resonates with you best. I tend to learn from multiple sources, so podcasts, books.
If we were to peek into your either Spotify or inbox.
Names. We want names, Q.
Oh, you want specifics. Podcast, I listen to The Pivot. I listen to All In podcast. I've kind of transitioned from listening to HR podcasts, honestly. I don't know why, but I'm trying to like follow where the world, learn more about the world. Acquired is another one. Hearing the journey of a company like over a century is always interesting. A Substack, I'll have to go and like pull the names of, I have a few that I subscribe to and I just constantly get inspiration from them. Very few, actually, maybe almost none are HR specific anymore. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm living that day in and day out. I need a different perspective on what's going on in the world.
I feel like it such encapsulates like what you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast of how you are such a business leader first.
Yeah, that's evolved. I had like a series of HR podcasts that I would listen to a lot. I don't know if it's my own evolution, and I'm not saying that they're not good by any means. I have a lot of limited time now, so.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Next question. What one sentence of advice can you share about how to accelerate a successful HR career in today's environment?
I would say kind of what we mentioned before, which is don't chase HR trends. Just try to understand the business, then understand the people. And the magic happens when you connect the people to the business. That's it. Like, don't chase HR trends. Those will come to you.
Wonderful. And last but not least, for anybody who's like, oh my gosh, Q, I'd love to catch up, hear more. How can our listeners best connect with you?
I'd say my website or LinkedIn. My website has a contact me form, which is probably the easiest because LinkedIn gets clogged pretty much, but I do try to keep up with LinkedIn too. So LinkedIn on my website, which is my last name.com, hamirani.com.
Love it. Thank you again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, just trying to be helpful to other HR professionals that are maybe a little earlier in their career.
Yeah.
And I think if we're raising the water level on if HR professionals are more successful and more business oriented, those businesses will be more successful.
Yeah, everyone wins.
Yeah.
The last plug I'll give, which might be obvious, but for PLA Academy, I went through it in 2020, I think. Is that right? Maybe very early on. It did give me perspective as well as an appreciation of what was to come in the roles I'm being in thereafter. So it was definitely instrumental in my career as well. So,
Well, thanks for the plug. Yeah, that was pre your first chief people officer.
Oh yeah, way pre 3 or 4 years. It was, I think, something that actually gave me conviction that I want to do it because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that because I did enjoy ops and tech a lot. And I think going through PLA was like a good kind of bird's eye view of all the stuff you would get exposed to. It's not just one pillar, and gave me that confidence to go pursue that career as well.
Watch out. I'm going to clip that and you're going to see it everywhere on LinkedIn.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of People Leader Accelerator Podcast, where we talk with business and HR leaders about what makes great leadership and great work. We hope you walked away with at least one game-changing insight for you and your team. You can find show notes and free bonus resources at peopleleaderaccelerator.com/podcast. If today's conversation sparked something for you, hit subscribe, leave a quick review, and share this episode with that one colleague who really needs to hear it. You know who I'm talking about. And if you're currently navigating the tricky waters of hiring top talent, developing leaders who actually lead, or building a culture that fuels growth, let's talk. You can find us at peopleleaderaccelerator.com. We're here to help you and your team not just survive, but truly thrive. I'm Jess Yuen, and on behalf of my co-host, Andrew Bartlow, thanks for investing your valuable time with us. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, keep learning and keep leading.